Hey, everybody. It's great to be with you. And I'm so excited to be here with Ness Jones, who has woken up very early for us today, which I really appreciate. And it's very early for you. Where are you, Ness? Where are you?
I'm on the Gold Coast in Australia. So, yeah, it's hot. It's early. I've got the fan on, so yeah.
That's nice. Well, yeah, it's getting warm for you guys now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's this week we're having a heat wave apparently, so up above 30, which is above 90 for you. So maybe heading into 100. So
Hello. Okay. Well, real quick, by way of introduction, I really wanted to talk to Ness today because she's a fascinating person when it comes to behavior and specifically a really, really big problem that people face, which is separation anxiety. And she's really a go-to expert in this field. So, um, why don't we let you give your credentials because I could go through this list, but it's pretty fascinating. I'll let you do that if I can, Ness.
yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you, Rob, for having me on your show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I appreciate the message that you're sharing with the world as well. My credentials, I mean, look, for me, credentials are important. You should have the pieces of paper that say that you know what you're talking about. However, it's results that really matter. You can have as many pieces of paper in the world saying you're certified in this, that, and the next thing, but if you're not getting the results, then obviously that's an issue in itself. But so I'm one of those people that started out in the dog industry because they had a dog. I mean, how many dog people were, yeah, I had that dog. No, so my very first dog as a adult was a really poorly bred Rottweiler, and he had all these health issues. And he had a MMM, which is muscular masticulatory mastitis, I think. Anyway, it's an autoimmune disease, and it attacks the body. And basically what it means is that the muscles rot. Well, rot is probably not the best word. But
They deteriorate.
Yeah, in the head, and you could actually see the outline of the skull. Went to one vet, and he was like, "Oh, we just fill him full of steroids, but he'll probably get arthritis." Blah blah blah. So I ended up with a holistic vet, and that kind of started me on the path. So we changed from this horrible, really expensive kibble that I used to feed to raw feeding and adding all this good stuff in there, and you could actually literally see the head come back. Unfortunately he then had osteosarcoma, so he passed pretty quickly after that regardless, but it started me on a path. So first of all, I became canine nutritionist because I thought that's, I wanted to learn about nutrition. Then I went on to canine myofunctional therapy, which is basically dog massage, and then herbal medicine for companion animals, which is, using herbs, etc. And that basically morphed into having a diploma in small animal naturopathy. But then, of course, that's never enough, is it? So I was involved in a dog club and ended up sort of. Can you hear that groaning?
Yeah.
My dog's groaning behind me. I don't know what he's doing. But yeah, so then I became a dog trainer and then a behavior consultant. And with the whole COVID thing, started to niche down into separation anxiety. But I've got diplomas in ethology and canine psychology and behavior. So, yeah.
And this is over how big of a period of time that you've done from beginning to?
Goodness, do we have to go there? A long time.
I mean, yeah. You've been doing this a while. You're committed.
Yeah.
Yes. It's something to be proud of. I mean, you might have started when you were 5. We don't know. So why go from? I mean, this is like. It's not. I wouldn't say this is a linear path. Like, why did you end up here when you started over here?
Yeah. So because I do have a love of the breed Rottweilers. And it was literally, I started off with that first Rottweiler I mentioned, then I had another one. Interestingly enough, she when she was home alone dug holes in the wall. So I think that sort of tweaks the whole separation anxiety training thing. But
That'll do it.
My third Rottweiler, that one that you can see behind me on the wall, he was a working line Rottie, and I ended up doing sport with him. And then I found I had a bit of a passion for the training side of things. So then that kind of went from sport training to behavioural training. And yeah, I just wanted to learn and help people too. So yeah, help
That's
people
awesome.
with their dogs. Yeah.
Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show. And by helping, I wish I had the, I have the patience with the dogs. I'm not sure I have the patience with the owners to help them train their dogs. Because you must run across this thing where people, it's like everything. It's like people hire personal trainers and don't want to do the workout, and honestly, they balk at the money, but then they pay the money and then they feel like I've paid, like, can't this just happen? But it takes a ton of work. And then you have the consistency issues in the household. So the more people you have, the more they have to be on the same exact page, and good luck with that, because, that takes some real coordination to get everybody not even just on the same understanding, the same page that way, but actually to behave consistently in the same way,
Yeah, look, a lot of trainers talk about owner compliance. I don't like using that word. And I think if anybody is in the dog industry because they want to work with dogs because maybe they don't like humans, they're in the wrong industry, because for me, it's about the humans just as much as it is about the dogs. You have to be good with people. And I actually don't like the word compliance, because what I would prefer, and it's the same for dogs, you want engagement. You want them to be engaged in the process. If they're not engaged, then it's really hard to overcome the dog's issues. So I think compliance has a bit of a negative connotation to it, whereas engagement is me building a relationship with both the dog and the human, which is really important. Luckily for me, because I specialize in separation anxiety, my clients, they're very engaged, because they know what it's like to live with a dog that can't be left home alone, and that comes with a whole gamut of stress for the client, for the dog guardian. It's easy having a dog with separation anxiety. So luckily for me, my clients are very much, I need to get this sorted. I need my life back. I need to stop feeling like a prisoner in my own home, etc.
Are there different, not the consequences, are there different types of separation anxiety?
So, you've got, I would say there is. So there's really severe cases, which I would suggest is, the ones that are throwing themselves out of two-story windows, the ones that soil in the house when even though they're house trained, they're that distressed that they're soiling in the house. Many of these dogs also have generalized anxiety, so they just can't cope with the world in general. So when mum or dad leaves, it's even harder for them. But then you've got the seniors maybe that are going through cognitive decline. Maybe they were fine before, and then they're just not coping very well. And of course, you've got the puppies and the young dogs that have never learned to be home alone. We saw that a lot with the COVID thing too. So all that, and still now, because so many people are working from home still. So those dogs get so used to having you around.
Yeah.
So there is sometimes with the young dogs, especially, there's that more of an element of frustration / FOMO, fear of missing out. you're going out, I always come with you. Why aren't I coming with you? And they have that that panic, and that's exactly what happened with my Rottweiler when I was a new dog guardian as an adult, and she wasn't getting her needs met. She was young, she was a teenager, and she would dig holes in the wall. To the point, we had 2 dogs at the time, both of them Rots, and we knew it was her because we would come home and she had white powder all over her snout and all over her feet. The other one didn't.
Your heart must have dropped.
Pardon?
Your heart must have dropped.
Oh, it's horrible. And that's why I think I can be really empathetic with my clients, because I know what they're going through, because you don't know what you're going to come home to. You walk out the door and you're thinking, oh my goodness, you don't know what you're going to come home to, but it's also that your dog's having a panic attack. Basically, your dog's not coping. So, and that's a horrible feeling too. You're feeling guilty that you have to leave your dog. You feel anxious, etc. So,
yeah. How likely is it that a dog that's super adjusted and is still young, like hasn't changed from puppy to adult to geriatric with those cognitive issues, how likely is it, like, I don't know, let's call it from 4 to 7, let's just in this scenario, that a dog could go from well-adjusted to anxiety, separation anxiety? Does that happen?
Do you mean 4 years or 4 months?
Yeah, with 4 years, within a 4-year, in that age bracket.
An adult dog. Yeah, so a good example of that is the dogs that were fine before COVID hit. And then they had, everybody at home for 2 years, and then suddenly life goes back to normal and they have to readjust to that home alone time. So we see examples of that. We also see dogs that are fine home alone, and then maybe their companion dog dies or passes, I should say. And then suddenly they can't cope because they're used to having that companion. And it might be a cat, or it could be a bird, it doesn't have to be another dog. And we can see kind of a sudden onset of separation anxiety. There's other horrible cases where a friend of mine has friends. I was a friend of a friend. But anyway, the story is that these dogs were fine home alone. Day and night, they were just fine. Mum and dad could go out whenever they wanted. While they were out this one night, some burglars came around and broke into the house. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they terrorized the dogs, but they certainly frightened the life out of them. And thereafter, those dogs were no longer able to cope at night by themselves. They could during the day, but not at night. So we can see definitely cases where dogs that are okay, they can actually become not okay. Given the right circumstances or the wrong circumstances.
Wow. Boy, you brought up some fascinating examples. I mean, what's interesting is in the first case, I think, is the one you gave where, dogs are fine. Parents are working at home during the COVID situation, and now they're not fine because they're used to. It strikes me that it's very profound how dogs are constantly learning and relearning. And there's never, ever a time when you're done training. You're always training dogs. You're always working with them behaviorally. Whatever the word you want to use is, you can use training. I just use training because it's a good generic term. But you're constantly, they're adapting all the time. They're these adapting machines that are so impressive. I mean, it's just like, it's amazing. And then the one that breaks my heart is the companion animal of the dog, the other dog or the other cat or bird, as you put it, goes and they're by themselves and that dynamic changes. Oh, that's heartbreaking. I had my yellow lab, Owen, when my first black lab, Buddy, passed. Boy, he changed a lot, and it was heartbreaking, so I had to change, to bring him into a new world. And, we did a lot of different things that we didn't do when I had both of them.
Yeah, it's true. And we had a black lab too. That was my first dog as a kid. The great dogs. He was a nut job though. But yeah, you're right. And they can easily build associations with things that you don't want. Normally with a dog that passes and the other one has sudden onset, if you like, separation anxiety, I mean, we have to allow for the fact that they grieve like we do. You know, there's that grieving process. And be mindful of that and careful about how we move forward thereafter with them. Often we don't say if your dog's got separation anxiety to get another dog, but in that particular example, it can sometimes help. I always suggest fostering to adopt, though, if you're going to go down that road, because the dog might not get on with your dog, or might not help the situation. And if you don't want another dog, don't get one. Just do the training.
Yeah. On the note of the loss of one pet for another, where do you come out on having the dog in the room if the dog dies or is put to sleep, is euthanized? Do you think that's a good thing to have the dog there?
I don't object to it. I used to have two cats, and they both one of them actually died. Both of them died of old age, but one of them died in the kitchen, and I let the other cat and the two dogs come and have a sniff and sort of say goodbye, and so they realised. I think there's merit in it. I haven't, most of my animals, it's been more of a case of taking them to the vets, but I don't have an issue with it. I think there's probably it's probably not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's been any research into it,
I think that'd be fascinating to research that, because I've had several vets that have told me to do it, and assuming it's a peaceful passing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've had one vet say, no, absolutely not. Doesn't need to happen. Shouldn't be. And, really great holistic vet that I love. But I don't know, intuitively, it feels like, I think animals are totally fine with death. I don't think they have any of the hangups that we have. That's my view, but I could be wrong. And just to be able to see that and have some closure, I felt really bad when that aforementioned dog, Owen, I took Buddy to the vet and I didn't really know where that would end. He lived to 16, and I just made the decision. Yeah, Black Lab is 16. Yeah. And I just made the decision right then and there. And I felt really bad driving home that I didn't give Owen the benefit of, like, where does he think he went? Does he know? Can he smell it on me? Probably. But if not, and so your mind is just on top of the grief you have all of this. I mean, I can feel the grief now, just not knowing that. And so anyway, thank you for answering that. It's off the topic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've taken dogs to the vets as well and not come back with them, and very much the same as you, wondered what the other dog thought of that. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So you have an app coming out. And so tell me, you're in Australia. I couldn't work with you if I want. You couldn't have you in my home. Well, I probably could if I had a private jet and I wanted to fly you in and pay you unlimited sums of money. But if that's not the case for most of us, what would you do for us if somebody called you and went to your website?
Well, firstly, I have most of my clients are in the US. I work remotely because with separation anxiety, it's pointless I don't want to come to your house. It's absolutely pointless. So, if you want to pay for me to come over there, I'm happy to accept, free flight to America. I haven't been to America.
Right.
But no, so I actually work remotely with my clients, because even if they lived down the street from me, I would still work remotely with them, because it's absolutely pointless trying to do this training with just an extra person leaving. So I do work remotely with everybody. So you could actually use my services. But next month I do have an app coming out. It's it's going to be step-by-step guidance. So anybody that has a dog with separation anxiety, it's a new membership, and there's kind of 2 tiers in terms of cost. So, I know cost is an issue at the moment, cost of living, etc. So the membership for app only, it's brilliant. So it gives you all the steps. It literally gives you, right, because you have to do the training. If your dog's got separation anxiety, it's not something they recover from. The training needs to be done. So it gives you all the steps. It gives you the what time you need to go out for, based on what your dog's threshold is, because we know they're all different. And it gives you a bunch of warm-up steps, and then according to how your dog goes, the app will automatically put the time up or it'll put the time down. And it just goes on like that. So it's really good. The membership also includes for people that don't have dogs with separation anxiety. And I'm really excited about this. I'll be getting guest speakers on. So people that are specialists in their field, and I'd love to have you on to talk about anything that's not separation anxiety related, because we know having dogs, there's a lot of other issues. It could be loosely walking, it could be recall, it could be they want to learn more about diet or nutrition, or senior dogs, whatever it is. I'm hoping people will ask me, we want to know about this, and I'll go and find out. I'll find experts in that field and have them come in. I'm hoping to do that. Well, it will be at least once a month, but I'm actually hoping to do that maybe twice a month. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So answer the question for the person watching that's like, well, why do I need a membership? Like, isn't this a one and done? Like, can't you just, wave a wand and get this done in a couple of days? Like, how long does this take?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. It's like anything. It's like dogs with reactivity. You wouldn't expect to resolve that in 5 seconds. Wouldn't it be magical if we could wave a magic wand? Your dog's cured. No, it's a process. And unfortunately, with dogs with separation anxiety in particular, and probably dogs that are reactive, if it's fear-based reactivity, we're kind of talking about trauma. So if you think of a person with PTSD, you can't wave a magic wand and expect them to be okay in 1 or 2 sessions. It's a process. It takes time, and you have to help the dog through an emotional barrier to being home alone. Because they're in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, or fretting, all those Fs. And it's not like teaching a sit. Sit is an obedience exercise, and there's not much emotion attached to that for the dog. If you wave a treat in front of their face, they're going to sit, but this is much more complicated. So it takes time.
Yeah. I'd love to be on with you, and I'll tell you what I'd love to talk about is nutrition has such a role to play in behavior and anxiety, the gut microbiome. We know all of this now. We're beyond like just uncovering it. We've gotten much deeper into mammals, but mostly human studies. But a long time ago, one of my favorite doctors, a very close friend, genius person, talked about how the health of the liver is responsible for anger. And I'm not saying that anger's responsible for separation anxiety, but anxiety, fear, anger is in some cases potentially tied to liver health or disease, unhealthy liver. And then the microbiome, we now know, is so tied to anxiety and all that. Now, that does not mean, it couldn't possibly mean that all separation anxiety comes from those sources. But do you think that it plays a role with some dogs, or like, do you feel like, yeah?
Oh, definitely. So one of the first things we ask dog guardians to do is get a vet check. And it could be, so talking about anxiety, obviously, we need to address the gut microbiome, but we also know that a dog that is suffering from, for example, allergies, and I've seen this with my own clients. I've seen the allergy season hit and the client's training go, doot, the dog's training go, doot, and we know that allergies start in the gut. So if we can address the gut, so I do like to take a holistic approach with my clients, but we address what's going on in the gut, then we see that improvement start up again because there's no more allergies. But of course, the gut-brain connection, and I mean, we know it's true for humans, and we also know it's true for dogs. So yeah, I'm definitely, and I am definitely a raw feeder, and I hope my clients feed raw. I can't force them to. But yes, we're always looking at, okay, so what are they eating? What can we do better? How can we improve the gut? And also dogs with, for example, gastrointestinal issues, they struggle more when they're home alone.
Wow.
If there's pain, arthritis or some other sort of pain, they struggle more. So we have to take a holistic approach for sure.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I'm so glad you said that. And I think if anybody's thinking about the microbiome and they're, anxious animal, it's not a probiotic, a specific species this is not a pill for every ill situation. This is, in a lot of cases, this is a lack of diversity and overall balance for that environment. So what's different for you over there down under and us over here in Colorado, these are completely different biomes. All of our guts are adjusting to our environment. So, but it totally starts with the diet. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how much money we're spending by saving money on these processed food diets, but we spend it on the back end?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, we're getting, dog trainers, or some people are putting their dogs on Prozac, or they are, spending all this money on supplements or medications of other kinds. It's just crazy. If we could just get the diet right, diet dialed in, boy, you could save a lot of frustration and expense.
Yeah. I mean, you hear it, don't you? My dog suffered from whatever.
Yeah.
I changed the diet. I put them on raw food, and now I'm seeing a completely different dog, and it flows through to their behavior as well as their coat condition, etc.
Yeah. Interesting. So can I force you to give me a range of time from beginning to end, that if we work with you through your app, on the conservative end, and also on the what's the word, on the very happiest end, what's the shortest and the longest time that one would have to be working, just so people have an understanding?
It really depends on the dog and the situation. There's so many factors. It's really hard for me to say. So firstly, in an ideal world, the dog guardian understands their dog's behavior and their body language and what the dog is trying to tell them. That's really important. They also understand what the dog's threshold is. So let's just call that the panic line. So anything over the line is detrimental to training, and we want to keep the dog under their threshold while we're doing the training, and then build on that using gradual exposure therapy. So every dog takes to the training differently. And if the dog has got, for example, generalized anxiety, as opposed to a dog that's simply never learnt to be home alone, you're going to get different results. So a dog that's just simply never learned to be home alone, or maybe it's a young dog that's a rescue that's just come into the home, and the dog guardian sets the training straight from the get-go. So kind of as a preventative or being proactive rather than reactive, then we're going to get different results. I had a client sign up with me, it was earlier this year. They'd just gone through COVID. Two dogs hadn't learned to be home alone. So they said, right, we want to get our lives back to normal, but we want to be proactive about it. We don't want to go out and expect our dogs to be okay. So we literally just started the training and they went through it really quickly. Honestly, let's say 8 weeks, and the dog's pretty fine. However, I used to offer 8-week programs, often found that wasn't enough. So it could be 6 months, worst cases, dogs that have generalized anxiety on top of that, maybe a year. So it really is dependent on the dog and the dog guardian knowing the situation, understanding what they're looking at.
I think I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I don't know these people, but I still say dog owners, but
Yeah.
I know that, dog
The
owners.
language is changing.
I know. I mean, I can't be called like a dog dad. I don't like any of these terms.
Yeah.
There's no terms I like.
Dog daddy.
Yeah, I mean, the people who are proactive, I can generalize here that they're usually on top of things. Like, it strikes me, it's very impressive to hear anybody would be proactive in this.
Yeah.
Those are very thoughtful, intentional, action-oriented people. That is not typical, unfortunately. But bravo if that's how you think, and that's that's where you place your dogs in your world, or your animals in your world. Oh my gosh. I mean, that, I'd give them free product for 6 months, just give them free product. But I think that the big thing here is first identifying, how does one know, is this a problem for people? I mean, I would know, but I know my dogs really well. Is this a problem for people identifying separation anxiety?
Most people know, because, I mean, look, there's different signs that a dog is struggling when they're left by themselves. So obviously you've got the ones barking, howling, crying, whining. Now you're out, so maybe you don't know if they are, but maybe your neighbors are knocking on your door or leaving nasty letters in your letterbox saying, hey, you saw this dog out, I'm sick of listening to it. So there's things like that. You can always get a camera on your dog and, you doesn't have to cost money. You could use a Zoom call. All you need is 2 devices. Doesn't have to cost money.
Just that's a great idea. Open your laptop, just do a Zoom call with your cell phone.
Yep.
Boom. Yeah.
Yep.
Or you could just, no, even if let's say you have a flip phone, you could put your laptop or iPad or whatever on a record and just let it go. Yeah.
But the caveat for that for me is really, if the dog, like, if I was going to do that, I'd want to stay nearby, because I wouldn't want to go out for 5 hours and my dog is howling, barking, crying for 5 hours, because I would want a live feed. So not recording it while I'm out, but having a live camera feed so I can see exactly what's going on and come back in if needs be. But some of the other signs, so obviously you get dogs that soil in the house. For me, dogs that soil, if they're house trained, I think that's pretty severe anxiety. They've basically lost control of their bowels, or their, if they're weeing in the house or what have you. Dogs jumping out of, trying to escape, frantic attempts to escape, jumping out of 2-story windows. I had one client, Kevin, he was left out in the backyard. He would climb up on the shed roof. There was stuff right by the shed roof. He climbed up there, cut his face up really badly. And he was only a little staffy, so not a big dog, and jumped over the fence. I think he did this a couple of times and was found up the road. Luckily, he didn't get run over. Big jump down, though, as you can imagine, from a shed roof down to the ground. So those dogs, they're so panicked that they're not thinking anymore. Their thinking brain isn't there anymore. All they're thinking of is, I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. And that's where we see damage around exit points and windows and doors and stuff like that.
Wow.
You got the dogs that eat the couch or your, credit cards or whatever you've got lying around, destroy things.
Yeah.
Those sort of signs are pretty obvious, I think, that the dog is in distress. And then, of course, you've got the dogs that get anxious before you even walk out the door. So they know what your departure cues are, and they they are triggered by them. They build up an association. Every time you leave me by myself, I'm scared. And so it starts earlier and earlier. They're like, oh, hang on, you got your lunch out of the fridge. That's what Kevin's cue was. That was his trigger. Mum got lunch out of the fridge and he started to react. It could be blow drying your hair, putting on makeup. It could be putting on a uniform, all those things, just certain shoes even, it could be something subtle. But lots of dogs get anxious before the owner leaves. So.
Yeah. Gus does not, this just happened a couple hours ago. If I don't have certain clothes on and he sees I'm getting ready, he just goes downstairs. He's like, goes right to his bed. He's like, oh, nothing's here for me. This is, and it's so sad because sometimes he's wrong. I bring him a ton of places. Today he was right, but sometimes it's like he just like head down, just like, oh, he's not taking me this time. He goes right downstairs to his bed. They're so smart, they got nothing but time to pay attention to every little thing you're doing and every body, like every little movement that you're making. It's phenomenal. What do you say to people who think that peeing and pooping while they're gone is kind of a attitude, let's say, or a, what is the word? It's like a rebuke, or, the dog is giving them, they take it personally. Like the dog is giving them attitude, like, how dare you leave the house? I'm therefore going to pee or poop. What is it you say to those people?
Or I'm going to destroy your belongings. Yeah. I'm going to pee on your bed. And people do believe that. They're putting human traits, I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to take revenge on you. How dare you leave me by myself? They're putting human characteristics and traits on the dog. Dogs don't think like that. That's what I say. Dogs do not think like that. Your dog isn't trying to get back to you at you for that. They are absolutely distressed. They're scared of being by themselves, and they can't help it. They really can't help it.
Can they be? So let's say you have 3 dogs. One has separation anxiety. Can the 2 learn to be anxious or have separation anxiety from the one?
Yeah, it can happen. Yeah. So you could have a scenario where that first dog, the anxious dog, triggers the other ones. You could have a scenario where maybe the anxious dog is dealing with it maybe okay, kind of coping, holding it together, and then maybe the other dog starts barking at the neighbor next door, somebody going past on the street. That barking can then trigger the anxious dog to start panicking. They might start barking and they just can't settle after that. They can feed off each other. Or you could just end up with 2 dogs, one that's fine and one that's not. So
sure,
it just is individual situations.
Sure. I think it would surprise a lot of people that dogs are not static. Like they're not always the same dog throughout their life, and it doesn't have to be puppy, adult, geriatric, dementia. It doesn't have to be those things. Like it could change within a year, based on anything, all kinds of, based on a new relationship you're in, a new home you're in, a child that they were close with their whole life goes to college, a baby comes into the home, brand new baby. Ooh, it's just lots of things.
All those things, big life changes. Maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's stress in the relationship, maybe somebody dies, maybe it's a human that dies, maybe it's a companion animal that dies. All sorts of things. Somebody moving into the home, somebody leaving the home, babies, as you said. All those things can impact the dog. And I think the important thing is to be mindful of that, recognize it, and then say, okay, how do we address this?
Yeah.
And whether it's a dog like that we're talking about, whether it's a new puppy that you've brought into your home, whether it's a new rescue you've brought into your home, for me, it's really important to take things slowly. So the analogy I like to use is, if you have a toddler and you want to teach it to swim, what are you going to do? Are you going to take it up to the deep end of the pool and shove it in the water? No, because what's going to happen, that toddler is going to probably end up with a fear of water. It's going to struggle and scream and maybe, it's not going to teach the toddler to feel good and safe and confident in the water. It's going to have the opposite effect. What you would do would be go and take it into the shallow end, maybe go on with it, take things slowly, build its confidence and make it feel safe in the water. So when we're talking about dogs, no matter what the situation, we want to do it in the same kind of way. We don't want to throw them in the deep end, which means basically, oh, you're here now, but I'm going out for 5 hours, even though you're a new dog, or something dramatic has changed in your life. What we really want to do is say, okay, how do we do this in a way that the dog feels safe and confident? And that is using that gradual exposure therapy, not going out for longer than the dog can cope with initially, understanding what that threshold is, and then gradually building up the time longer and longer and longer.
So, Ness, do you recommend people leave a TV on or music on? And if so, what kind of music?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you're going to do music in particular, it's good that the dog has an association with it first. So you're sitting down, you're relaxed, the dog's relaxed, it's quiet time. You put the music on, and when the dog builds up that lovely association, I hear this music, and every time I hear that music, it's our relaxing quiet time. So then you would add into the training regimen. What type of music? Well,
heavy metal?
No, possibly not heavy metal. Apparently dogs like reggae though. Some dogs like reggae. Generally classical, some sort of classical music, but the caveat is you don't want to go and put on the classical music radio station and expect the right kind of classical music to be coming out of that, because I used to volunteer at a shelter, and they used to blast radio classical music in there, and honestly, some of it was awful.
Really fast.
Oh, or just jarring. There's some
the symbols.
Yeah, like Rimsky-Korsakov, and just stuff that's like really jarring. So you want to find something that is a little bit more mellow. I think classical music, Baroque music. When I say classical, I'm talking about the era now, not the broad classical music. Baroque, but generally a low pitch and a low frequency is the best. But building up that association first. Otherwise, if they don't have that association, that means, oh, I hear this, I should be relaxed.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably best to create a playlist or have a CD if you still use CDs. You control the music. I used to put on a smooth jazz channel that you bring up a really good point. I didn't know everything that was coming out of that smooth jazz channel, but they seemed to love it. And when I turned it on, they went right to bed. But yeah, I mean, that controlling it, I think, is a really wise move. Yeah.
And with TV and radio, you don't know what's going to come out of that. There could be an explosion. The ads, you don't know what the ads are going to do. Dogs that are sensitive to noise, and then maybe there's a firework or something on the radio or the TVs, probably could unsettle them, undermine the training. There's a lady called Lisa Spector. She was the original, she was one of the founders of Through a Dog's Ears, but she's got her own company now called My Zen Pet. And she has very nice calming music, especially for dogs with anxiety, which she's developed. She's a classical musician, so she knows what she's talking about, and she studied this, and she studied how to ensure that dogs, teaching them to be calm, building that association, and providing the correct type of music. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Lisa Spector. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's end on this note. You mentioned, because we're getting to be, this just flew by. We're
Yeah,
at
didn't it?
45 minutes. Um, let's go into rescues. You have a long, you might have a long history. Well, a 2-year-old is a lot of history. That's 2 years that you didn't know this dog. How should somebody be thinking about evaluating, or if I don't know, if you're thinking about getting a rescue dog, how do you think about their mental past, and and making that a part of your calculation when you get this dog, if you can handle it, or not. My
Yeah.
sister, I'll just full disclosure, I'm thinking about a very specific situation, which is my sister. And, sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what's happening with where this dog has been and what it's suffered. And so it's part of the bargain.
Yeah, you don't know. And you don't know what they're like home alone, and you don't know what they're like out and about in the real world as well. So,
Yeah.
and often most dogs that get surrendered to rescues, it's usually during their teens when they're a little bit, let's call it rambunctious,
Yeah.
unruly, and people go, oh, I can't deal with this,
Right.
I'll surrender it to rescue. But unfortunately, they can actually go through several homes before they find their forever home. And sometimes you know the history and sometimes you don't. So you do have to be mindful of that. But if you're bringing a new rescue into your home, again, what I was saying before with don't throw it in the deep end. Do take things slowly. You don't want to bring it in and go, right, I'm going out for an hour and expect them to cope. You want to make sure that they're used to being home alone, that they're able to cope. So leaving them for a minute, watching them on a camera, taking the steps, doing gradual exposure, and making sure they're feeling confident and calm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even do any training or leave them by themselves for the first week, just so they get, because there's this, I don't know if you've heard of the 3-3-3 rule. It's a big generalization, but basically it's like it takes a rescue 3 days to kind of get used to its surroundings, 3 weeks to feel a bit more at home, and then 3 months to feel like settled in and this is my new home. However, it's such a generalization. You can't get to the end of 3 months and say, my dog's not okay. It's 3 months now. Why isn't my dog okay? It just depends on the dog and what they've been through and how robust they are in themselves. If they've got other issues going on, are they a fearful dog or are they a confident dog? And sometimes what we find is when a new dog comes into the home is they may not show their true selves for a few months. Maybe
what does
even
that mean?
It just means that, you might not see some behaviors until they feel more at home, whatever that is.
Interesting. Okay.
But it could go either way. So, it could be like a really scared, fearful, anxious dog that doesn't want anything to do with anybody. And then if they're, given time to, settle in and feel confident, and then suddenly they come out of their shells.
Okay.
And they become their true self in that respect, and they're not fearful anymore. It's just because we don't know what's happened in the past and they're scared of everything. So basically giving them time, I think, is really important. Not expecting them to be this wonderful dog. And look, some dogs do come into your home and they're perfect straight away, but some dogs might struggle a little bit more.
Wow. So
does that help your sister at all?
No, I don't know. I'm just digesting it. It's very interesting. We have all these people working with all these different situations, and all that people want is to have an easy assimilation and have a fun dog or fun cat or fun bird or rabbit. But it's there's some more. There's some detail there. It's a commitment.
It is a commitment. I quite like the foster to adopt. So, you can find out if that dog is the right fit for you before you commit to keeping it. But you've got to give the dog time.
Yeah. Well, that's also, I mean, the dog doesn't know it's being, quote, fostered. It just knows it's in a home. And so if it's been fostered a bunch of times, that's something I would consider. I would at least ask the question, why has that happened? And I would also consider it in my total of, my full-time adoption. Just in terms of like what we're dealing with here, do you think that some breeds are more prone to
separation anxiety? Look, there's been a lot of studies done. It's kind of, it's just depends what study you read. So it really depends on A, how robust the study is, B, is it anecdotal, as in, is it just the dog guardians giving their take on what's going on, or how scientific is it, et cetera, et cetera. So, and also it can be skewed simply by the popularity of the breed. So here in Australia, oodles are really big popular dogs. So labradoodles, groodles, which I think you guys call golden doodles. Golden retriever cross, but yeah, we call them groodles. Cavapoos, Maltipoo, all those. They're popular here. So it's going to look like they suffer more from separation anxiety, but really, is that the case, or is it just that they're a popular breed here? But dogs such as, same with the dachshunds. Do you say dachshunds, dachshunds?
Dachshunds, yeah.
Yeah. So they're quite popular here as well. And, you might say, well, they suffer more from separation anxiety. Wheaten terriers have come up a couple of times in studies as being prone to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's more to do with genetics and the breeding. So, there unfortunately some dogs have anxious lines. There's anxiety running through the lines, and breeding can be for the wrong person a money-making situation, and they don't care what they're breeding or what the dogs are like. It's more about the money. So then, unfortunately, these dogs are being bred, and those lines are continuing.
Yeah. Is it like a lot of, I mean, obviously, if you're breeding a lot of anxious dogs, and they're not inbred, it can definitely transfer. But what about just inbreeding in general? Do you have any experience with that?
Not really, no. I mean, no, in terms of separation anxiety, I don't often hear
Just anxious, anxiety, mental health issues. We'll just lump it all in the same.
Yeah. I mean, I would suggest that it's just like us. If you get inbreeding, you're going to have some sort of issues, aren't you? So,
yeah. That's usually a good recipe for negative stuff.
The other can I just mention this? So
of course.
Often breeders that are the ones that are breeding the poor lines. Maybe they're not very good breeders in terms of other factors. So it might not be that the lines are poor. It could be maybe mum was stressed when she was pregnant. We don't know. Obviously these are things we don't know about because we're never going to find out. But is she stressed when she's pregnant? Is she getting a good diet and all that sort of stuff? When she whelps a puppy, is she stressed then? Are the puppies stressed? What is the breeder doing to socialize the puppies to help them cope with the world and make them confident little puppies? There's a study, and I always forget the name of the guys that did the study, but what they suggested was that separation anxiety is less likely in dogs that have got really good socialization between the ages of 5 months and 9 months. And so socialization doesn't mean taking your dog down to the dog park and letting it run around with the big dogs. We're talking about letting them feel confident in the world. So, going out and experiencing the world, but while they're feeling safe and they're not being exposed to scary stuff, that sort of thing. And seeing being exposed to kids and shopping centres and whatever it is, other dogs, but in a safe, kind way. But I would suggest that 5 to 9 months should start a lot earlier, obviously. And I'm sure there's not a dog trainer on this planet that wouldn't agree with me. But, from birth, what is going on with the puppies, with the care that they're given? Are they being exposed to scary stuff? Or, if they are, is it done in a way that they feel safe and confident? And then going through, of course, that 8 to 16-week period is quite crucial, the critical period, and making sure that puppies are exposed to good stuff and having good experiences and feeling confident. And a confident dog is going to be much more able to cope with home alone time because they're just confident in their whole well-being. An anxious dog is going to struggle a lot more.
Yeah. Isn't that the case with kids too? I mean, I don't have kids, but that's what you want. You want supremely confident. I call it in the dog world, confidence and being exposed to things safely. I call it the been there, done that. They're, when they recognize like, oh, I've heard that before, the vacuum, the pans clanging, and, this or that, hunting dogs get the gunshots and they're like, yeah, whatever, I guess it's time for me to, go get something. So yeah, it's just a knowing. That's why I call it been there, done that, because it's old hat. When something's new for all of us, our brains are alert and we're like, okay, how do I make sense of this? To some degree, you're in a state of anxiety to some degree. It doesn't mean you have physical anxious signs or you feel distressed, but you're trying to, your brain is scanning, trying to figure out, is this bad or good at the very least?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I like that, been there, done that. That's a good way of expressing it.
That's what I want. I want dogs that and labs, if you have good labs, they are supremely great at this. Doesn't matter what my dogs, like, sometimes I'll hear a sound and I'll be like, whoa, like that scared the hell out of me. And look, what is going on? My dogs are just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just want a very, when you say go to the mall and all of that, like, I just think that's so smart, is just expose them to people and crowds and, all this stuff. And they just go,
Yeah.
Got
That
it.
exposure is while it's important, it has to be done so the dog isn't scared. So taking a dog into the mall and it's freaking out is actually counterproductive. So the dog has to feel safe and secure and building its confidence rather than scaring the crap out of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it were me, I would be going at the mall at night and they're like, all right, I got this mall thing. I know the smells. I know the feeling of the floor. I got it all. And then you might bring them a little busier and a little busier. And then you bring them in a tighter space of a store and, and you work them up to it. Maybe you do some training in the mall. You look silly, but you might do a little bit of training so they're focused and they're also able to tune out the background of their world. I don't know. I just think like a dog. I mean,
I agree. Yeah. I think it's maybe it's easier for you in America than it is for us here. I know in Europe it's really easy. You can take dogs anywhere, but here in Australia, you go to the mall, no dogs allowed. You go to the park, no dogs allowed, or dogs, it's really, you can't take them on public transport. You can't take them hardly anywhere. There's some coffee shops that allow you. There is a couple of stores that will allow you to take your dogs in, but unfortunately, we're not like Europe. I wish we were a bit more like Europe. I think dogs in European countries are more confident and more kind of been there, done that, because they're exposed to all that stuff at a young age, whereas here in Australia, they don't get that exposure because you can't take your dog here, you can't take your dog there. So, but yes, I think it's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, I take your point, and you can go to certain states that are way more, liberal about bringing dogs places, and some that aren't. certainly towns. I mean, I live in Boulder, Colorado, where, we seem to be pretty dog friendly here, but you can go to a couple, you know, miles down the way and they're not. So just go find some things. I just recently took my dog, my black lab Gus, to a dog show. Because I have relatives that are dog judges, and I went and visited them, and he'd never been in that. And I just said, hey, let's go. But you and I, we're talking like we always do. You're close to me. You're not going to get distracted. And he was great, but he was also, these are smells he's never smelled. He was just kind of, he was like a little curious. I was like, nah, come on. We're doing a job. We're working. We're moving.
Yeah.
So I don't like those long leashes, or I don't do any of that stuff. Yeah, I like a good citizen as a dog. That's what I like. Yeah. Well, Ness, it's been such a pleasure. So go see Ness at nessjones.com, and your app will be on the website, right?
Yeah. So it launches in mid-December, and it will give you all the steps that you need to train your dog. So
great.
The link is on the website to get onto the waiting list.
Such a pleasure to talk to you. This has been a fascinating topic.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the work you do, because you're teaching people how to live with the dog they have. We all have to do that, and not surrender the responsibility, surrender the dog to a shelter because it didn't come out of the box perfectly. You have to work it and mold it and support it. It's a living being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And everybody loves their dogs. So look at the dog in front of you and see what its needs are. And
it has needs. And that's what makes them special.
Yeah, they are special.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ness, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we appreciate you being on and listening to our talk about, I thought it was fascinating, about separation anxiety. It wasn't a downer at all. This is incredibly inspiring.
I'm glad. I could have talked for another hour. So we touched the tip of the iceberg, but yeah.
And that's what people do go to your website for. They can get deeper into the nitty gritty with you. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day, everybody.